What is up, everybody? I am so excited for episode 35's class in session. I'm going to be walking you guys through some pretty cool things. Today, we're going to be talking about building a new bag. And I'm really excited about this for a couple reasons. And the big part is that I have tried to throw only one manufacturer for a long time. For the longest time, I was trying to really only throw mint. Now, when I first started throwing a lot of mint, I didn't have all of the, they did not have all of the slots that you would need in your bag. They didn't have an understable mid range, or they just came out with the lasso, so like an overstable putt approach disc, more so than the Profit, it seems, and a couple other discs in their lineup. But over the years, they have filled out their lineup, and that's been great. And so I've really tried to throw a lot of mint because I was living in Texas. I really enjoyed the plastic. I enjoyed the names of the disc, the marketing, the flights of the disc. But, I've decided that I'm going to change things up. I have not always thrown mint. I have thrown some other discs. I've thrown from other manufacturers. And so it's not completely new to me, but it is fairly new. I'm revisiting some discs that I haven't thrown before, and so I'm really excited. But the big thing to this is that because I'm done throwing only one manufacturer, or trying to only throw one manufacturer, I have a lot of options available. And OTB is being gracious enough to send me some discs. I'm super excited to try them out. I've always liked Millennium, so I'm trying to see some Millennium molds that I haven't really messed with before, seeing if they can make the bag. So I'm super excited about that. But here's the thing. I am playing in a tournament in 3 weeks. Now, not only is that a big deal to be changing your bag 3 weeks before a tournament, but it's also my first tournament since April 2022. So it has been a year and a half, over a year and a half since my last tournament. And that's a thing we'll talk about in the main show a little more in depth about, prepping for this tournament and that kind of thing. But I am really excited to talk to you about building my new bag, my thought process behind it, and why I don't think I've lost my mind. All right, so I'm building my new bag, and pretty much the original lineup, we'll say, for my bag was going Bullet, and then Jokery, and then Peace Train or Lobster, basically the same disc, but mainly the Peace Train, the Mustang, the Bobcat, the Jackalope, which then became the Grackle. And then, I'm trying to think. After that, I was then messing around with either doing like the Freetail or the Lone Star Disc Guadalupe, which is another one of my favorite discs. And so I was having that. And then on the very end of my lineup, I guess you could say, the very high end of my lineup, the fastest would be the Orc, the Innova Orc, but also Mint Discs Longhorn. So I was literally throwing, 90-95% mint. And so now what I'm basically saying is I'm sticking with the Bullet and the Bobcat. I've thrown the Bobcat for over 3 years. And I'm not really looking to get rid of it. I have like 16 or 18 or 20 backups, so I'm not really looking to get rid of that. And the Bullet is like not only a great throwing putter, but it is honestly like the only putter I've ever used where I just clicked with so well. And so I'm not really wanting to mess up my putting too much. I am excited, to potentially try some new putters, but I'm not rushing to do that just yet. But so all those other slots, the overstable, I'm sticking with the Jokery, but like all my mid ranges besides the Bobcat and pretty much all my drivers are really going through a change. And so I currently have a lineup set up right here behind me that I'm going to walk you guys through. And this is by no means an in the bag, because it's very possible that some of these are not in the bag in a month. So we'll go ahead and let's get into that. So like I said, sticking with the bullets, I got two bullets here up top. Well, technically Jester Love, which is basically a bullet, but a different company, different stamp. And then I do have an actual royal bullet under that. This bullet, this purple one, I got it used. It was lightly used, and now it's been abused. This thing is super flippy. It's a royal firm, so it's not too flexible or anything, which is really nice for throwing some nice shots and being able to like hold the disc tight and commit to the line. This thing is super flippy. But those are kind of my two putters right now with going towards the basket. I like the purple flippy one that I have for shots that either I'm throwing and need a lot of turn. I need a long putt that's going to glide and have some turn, but still, fade out because of the slow speed at the end. So that has been super helpful, but I mainly will use my orange putter for anything inside 60 to 80 feet, unless I'm having to navigate some things and I'm not wanting to mess up the disc too much. I'll use the purple bullet. I have an orange Eternal bullet that has been my throwing putter for I think 2 years now, and it's definitely beat in. There was a period where I had it in the bag and took it out for several months, and then I put it back in the bag, and it has been solidly in the bag for the last year and a half. And it is seen some wear and tear on it, but it is so much fun to throw. Nice and straight. It'll still get me a little fade at the end, but very, very, very little. I mean, this disc will turn and then it'll come back. So it's not completely flippy yet, but I'm excited to see what it can become by being super flippy. Now, I'm also, not throwing a putter 400 feet. So if I had the power to throw this 400 feet, this thing would definitely be turning and flipping. But right now, getting it to about 250, 260 I feel like is my limit, unless I'm going downhill, and I've thrown it on downhill holes where I could get 360 with it because it's a pretty good downhill, and this thing is fast and it glides a lot for a putter. So the last disc before we get into new ones is going to be the Pro Discus Jokery, and this comes from William. He's changed his name a couple times. He was Triple Mando, now he's Frisbee Golf, I think, is what his name is. But he sent me this Jokery, and it is exactly what I've been looking for in an overstable putt approach disc. It doesn't overlap with my Bobcat whatsoever, and it's nice and flat. Honestly, it feels very similar in hand feel to the Bullet. Because it's nice and flat on top, it's beadless on the bottom. It's a little taller than the Bullet, but it does have a very similar profile to the Bullet. And so when I grab it and I go to throw it, I know it's a different disc and I know it's going to fly differently, but the hand feel is similar enough to where it's very comfortable in doing that. So that has been a nice addition to the bag over the last month or so, and I have really, really enjoyed that. So those are the technically two throwers and then two putters that aren't going anywhere as I am building this new bag. But we're about to get into a bunch of new things. So here's what I'm kind of looking at right now. I like putters and mids. I will have a bunch of those in my bag because I feel super confident throwing putters and mid-range discs. It's just kind of my bread and butter, and I think for the longest time that's because I didn't have an adequate backhand, and so I could forehand drivers, but I never liked to throw drivers backhand, and so I was only throwing putters and mids, forehand and backhand, and so I've just been always really comfortable with these classes of discs, and so I've always liked having a lot. So I got two throwing putters, and I currently have 3 mid-ranges in the bag, and that may not sound like a lot, but there are times where I can have 5 or 6 mid-ranges in the bag depending on the slots I'm trying to fill and if I'm trying to layer a lot of things. Like there was at one point I had 3 Bobcats in the bag, all distinctly different stabilities, and it's very possible that when all of this is said and done, I can have multiple Bobcats in the bag. But right now we're going with Old Faithful. You guys have seen Matt before on the channel. He's thrown the Comet on and off for years. I've thrown the Comet on and off for years, but it is making its return to the bag. I have quite a few Comets. I think I got about 4, maybe 5 comets, and it's just such a good disc. Great understable mid-range. As someone with an ultimate frisbee background, a comet is nice and wide. Not obviously not as tall as a disc, as a lid, a frisbee, but I really like it a lot. It's a lot of fun to throw, and I played with it this past weekend, and it just felt great in the bag. Perfect for hyzer flips and flat to turn to get some really great carving shots in the woods especially, but also on open courses. Tons of glide. Just a really good, reliable disc. Love the Comet. After that, I'm going back to another old reliable disc. This is a KC Pro Rock that I found years ago at a disc golf store, and I just love the color. It's red with gold stamp that's worn out now, but it's just been awesome. And so kind of building this bag, I'm like, I love having those 4-speed mid-ranges. I don't necessarily feel like I need a 5-speed mid-range, because if I go 4-speed mid-range, I can easily go up to a 6 or most likely a 7-speed driver without feeling like there's too much overlap. Sometimes I feel like a 5-speed mid-range to a 7-speed driver makes it a little bit difficult for me to decide exactly what I want. And so I like going for those 4-speed mid-ranges, like the Comet, like the Rock. This Rock is very nice and straight. It doesn't get too much turn yet, but I'm expecting it will, and so I got some other rocks lined up to probably start layering. So it's highly possible for me to bump out a Comet for rocks, or to just layer a couple rocks above the Comet and then below the Bobcat, which is the next disc that hasn't left the bag in years. This particular disc hasn't always been in the bag, but the mold has. I've cycled through several Comets, mainly Royal ones that are no longer usable, or I've lost them. Same with some premium plastic Bobcats. But like this one, there's a misprinted Taco Cat Bobcat, and so very cool stamp, a lot of fun to throw. It is not as overstable as a brand new Bobcat, so it's a little more workable, but it still has good stability at the end. It will fly straight and then have some nice fade and even get some good skip. And so you can really work this disc backhand and forehand. And because of the flat profile, feels really good for the forehand. So I like that a lot. So those are my putters and mid-ranges as I'm building this new bag. Not a whole lot has changed. Before I had, the Peace Train and the Mustang, and I basically swapped those out for the Comet and the Rock. They're slower than both of those discs that I named previously. And I really am liking that, because now as we get into the drivers, I feel like there's a little bit more separation. Now, don't get me wrong, Mustang and Peace Train are great mid-ranges. Like them a lot. Honestly, if I end up not loving the Comet, I can just very easily substitute the Peace Train back in. So that's one thing that I've noticed over the years when building my bag over time, is I will find a type of disc that I like, and I will just try different discs that fit that slot from different manufacturers, and then just over time it's like, what, I'm kind of tired of throwing let's say throwing the Peace Train. I want to throw the Comet, okay? And so I can flip-flop those. Or I'm tired of throwing the Eagle, so I'll throw the Grackle, or I'll throw the Alpha, or I'll pick up the Bear instead of a Thunderbird, and the Stag instead of something a little flippier, like a CD2 kind of thing. So it's just really fun to mess with different kinds of discs over time and find the slots that I like, and then plug in discs from other manufacturers for them. So that is something that I've been doing a lot over the years. And so pretty much all the discs that I'm talking about today are discs that I've had on my disc golf rack, and I just decided to put them in and configure them in such and such a way to benefit me in making a new bag. So pretty much all these molds I've thrown before. I've thrown them at some point. I like them a lot. That's why I've kept them and have gotten rid of other molds. And so yeah, that's basically that. So now coming to the drivers, we'll just go with like 6 and 7 speeds right now. I have a Fission Crave in the bag. I also have a Neutron Crave and a few others, but the Neutron one that I like a lot too is lightweight and flippy. So I'm considering bagging it as well, whereas this Fission Crave is a little bit more straight and has a touch of fade at the end, or a decent amount of fade for a Crave at the end. It's definitely getting beat in, so it's not beefy by any means, but it has by far more stability than my purple Joker, my pink Joker Crave. This purple one has a lot more stability. Then probably one of the discs I've owned the longest, I also got this disc used. I've had it probably for 4 years now. That's crazy to think about, man. Had this disc for 4 years, got it used, and it was already like a fairly straight eagle, but over time this thing has gotten super beat up. So I got a Star Eagle here. It's not the prettiest color for those of you looking at the video, not the prettiest color, but it is super flippy. Just the other day I was playing and forehand hyzer flip 350. Easy. Like, this eagle doesn't really fly like an eagle, which is a lot of fun for layering, and I really like that. It's not too domey whatsoever. The star plastic feels great. There's a lot of life left in this disc, and I'm super excited to have it back in the bag and still throwing. Now, because that disc flies like a beat-in straight eagle, I need something with a little bite at the end. And so I have quite a few Greg Barsby Tour Series eagles. And so I have this pink one here that's got a little bit of dome. So it's got a little bit of dome to it. It's not the domiest one I've seen or have. I think I have some that might be a touch domier, but it's really pretty, more overstable, flies like more of an eagle, but it is not ridiculously overstable. Like, yes, it's an eagle, so it has that 3 fade. We're going to talk about the eagle a little bit more in the main show. But it's one of those discs where I feel like this is definitely workable. I just got to get more familiar with it. Right now, any issue I've had throwing this disc is just a lack of familiarity, because the last time I was throwing these Barsby Eagles, I didn't quite have the backhand that I have now. And so I remember it being way more stable than they actually are. And so that's been a pretty cool thing to experience, and seeing my form improve and progress in that way. But yeah, so those are basically the 7 speeds. And now to round out the top of the bag, I got 4 more discs, but 3 different molds. I haven't gotten to anything in the drivers yet that are super flippy. And so obviously I'm needing to change that, whether it's for a forehand shot, which will be very unlikely with this particular disc, but mainly for backhand hyzer flips, even potentially some rollers, but really just being able to take advantage of a massive tailwind. And when I'm really needing to carve some lines with a nice hyzer flip, which is one of my favorite throws, I have the Lone Star Disc Dome. I have liked this disc for a long time, but I just never bagged it because I always felt like it was a little bit awkward slot in my bag. And now I don't feel that way. It's listed as an 8-speed. It might have a 7-speed rim, or it could have an 8-speed rim. I have to look on PDGA and what they say, but this one is pretty domey. I don't think it's the domiest dome out there, but it is a fun one. It's a really pretty color too, and this thing is flippy. I like the dome over the tumbleweed for 2 main reasons. I have never thrown a tumbleweed that actually was as understable as it was supposed to be, and the dome has a smaller rim, so it's a little bit more comfortable in my hands for both backhand and forehand. Like I said, I don't really foresee me forehanding the dome a whole lot, but if it ever needed to, I could do that. It's not too domey that it's uncomfortable. After that, I have the Lone Star Guadalupe, and in building this bag, I was like, I gotta find a way to get the Guad back in. The Guad says it's a 7-speed, but it has like a 2-centimeter rim or something like that, or a 1.9 centimeter rim. So it basically is like a 9 or 10 speed, which I can totally see when you go and throw it, and it just how much glide it has along with the speed and the kind of flight that you get out of it. It's a lot of fun. Love this disc. I can throw it backhand and forehand and get very similar lines turn is pretty predictable. It's good for hyzer flips, but I kind of treat it as like my distance disc outside of something like the dome, because it's the most workable of my higher speed discs. Granted, it's listed as a 7, but I treat it when I'm going to throw it more like a 9 or 10 speed, something that I'm really trying to work and get out there. And I really like it to be over the dome, which is far flippier, and under this next disc, which is the Orc. Now, I have wanted to try the Orc for years because it's basically a faster eagle, but I just never got around to trying it, never got around to looking for one actively. And then about, I don't know, 4 to 6 months ago, I finally decided, you know what, I need to pick up an Orc. I traded in some discs at the Nashville Disc Golf Store, got an Orc there, had OTB send me one, and I have two, which is why they're both in the bag. The first one is a Star Orc, which is 166 grams. So I purposefully got this lighter one, lighter weight, because I was like, okay, this is me really getting into distance driver range, with it being a 10 speed. And at 166, I wanted to make sure that I could forehand it and backhand it without it being too domey. And it has some dome, but it's nothing abnormal or worth noting. And I can definitely throw this disc backhand and forehand. I really like it a lot because of its lighter weight. It holds a straight line really nicely, but that high speed overstability, it's going to get a nice little skip at the end. And so it's been a really fun disc to have above the quad, above the eagle and the dome, to kind of just help, especially in some smaller headwinds. Now, if I have a bigger headwind, I have a Champion Orc here, which is much flatter than that Star Orc and brand new, and it is heavier. It's the 173 to 175. So this is definitely like that headwind range. But one thing I have noticed is that an Orc, though high speed overstable, is not a meat hook necessarily, at least not for me. Like, this disc will still fly out straight and get some glide, but it has been a really cool addition to the bag, and I've really enjoyed it, and layering the Orcs and building my bag that way. Now, honestly, I wasn't really intending on this being like a quasi in the bag, but I figured, that was the best way to explain kind of how I'm building a new bag. So the way I look at it, after having taken you through all that, is what are my strong points? Where do I find that? What kind of discs do I find that I like to throw? I mentioned earlier, certain slots I will get discs from different manufacturers and kind of stockpile on those. That way I can always change them out. Everything's always going to fly a little differently from each other, but like a stag or a bear with a jackalope and an alpha will fly pretty similarly. Same with like a grackle and an eagle, and even throwing the crave in there a little bit. The crave's a little less stable, but you can find some craves that start off a little more stable in the beginning, and so you kind of have that all mixing, although there's some variability there. Same with mid-ranges. And so it's just been a lot of fun to do that. And so when I'm building a new bag, I'm like, okay, what do I like to do? Well, I like to throw putters. I like to throw mid-ranges. Well, if those are the two things that I like to do, then it doesn't make sense to find discs that don't fit what I like to do. And that mainly comes into play with drivers. I like a driver that I can throw backhand and forehand. I'm not really interested in bagging discs that I can only throw one way or the other. Now, that's also because I carry a smaller bag with the Squatch Lure. It can't carry 40 discs. But I don't want to carry 40 discs. And I feel like if I can have 15 discs that I can throw backhand and forehand and get them to fly anywhere from 300 to 350 feet on backhand and forehand, if not a little bit more, I've hit 370, 380. Like, if I can do that for both backhand and forehand, then I feel like I have a pretty complete game. And I like having discs that can do both of those things for me. Now, some are better than others. Like, I just put the Eagles back in the bag, so I'm having to work on those and learn them a little bit more. and kind of reacquaint myself with them, we might say. And so, like, it's been a little touch and go with those discs, but there was one when I played this past weekend. I got the Eagle. It was a downhill hole, but I had to hit a nice low ceiling, and I got that disc to go probably about 350. Okay, with some fade at the end because I needed the disc to fade anyway. And so that was really cool. And there were a couple times I threw the Quad and it flew really well, and then I threw the Comet and it flew really well. And so just kind of adjusting my experience on the course and figuring out, okay, here's what I want to do here, and here's the discs that I have. It's just been really nice having the flexibility to do that with different discs and not having to go buy a brand new lineup. And so building a new bag is definitely a journey. It's something that I'm really excited about and I'm looking forward to. And so I want to hear from you guys in the class and session, like, what discs do you think I should try? Like I said earlier, I have OTB sending me some discs from Millennium, and I'm super excited. I have a Polaris LS coming in, a JLS. They have a new prototype disc coming out, which is basically the flight numbers are like a MVP wave 11.5 minus 2.2. They're sending me a 0G Scorpius, which is basically a Shrike top and Destroyer bottom. So a high speed overstability, but it's 0G, so it's going to be like 150 grams. So I'm really excited to see what that disc can do, because I have a couple Scorpius, Greg Barsby Scorpiuses as well. And so it'd be fun to kind of mess around and see what those do. And I'm trying to think, some other discs that they're sending me. They might be sending me some Omegas. I'm not entirely certain. There might be a few others in there that I'm just forgetting now off the top. Oh, Velas, which seem to be like a quasi Eagle, but we'll see. I'm really excited to try them out. And so those will hopefully make it in the bag at some point, at least to test out anyway. But what discs do you think I should try out? I have some bears that can very likely make it back into the bag. But anything that I'm missing, what do you guys think I should throw? I'd love to hear from you, so let me know about that. And yeah, that's basically me building a new bag. I know I have a tournament in a couple weeks, but I'm really excited because I feel confident with these discs, mainly because I've thrown them all before, and that's going to help my confidence a lot. I'm not going to feel like it's something completely new. Obviously, I'm going to keep working, keep getting practice with these discs, but I am definitely excited to play with them. It's been really exciting just like feeling new plastics and just messing around with new discs and being like, oh man, I forgot what I could do with this one. And I'm excited to do this here. So that has been really cool. But that is all I have, guys, for the class and session. Now let's go ahead and let's get into the main show.